This is World Stories, and I'm Sumi Somaskanda with your International Reporters magazine. This week, we move to the beat of the Tsam dance in Mongolia. We take off with Bulgaria's new airport control tower and hope you're hungry for some creepy, crawly creatures. All that and more coming up. But first, the United Nations says fighting energy poverty is a key challenge for the world community. There are more than 1 billion people who don't have reliable access to electricity. In developing countries where poor infrastructure and limited funds make it hard to provide power, renewable energies are an increasingly effective solution. We've seen how the power of the sun and the wind can help lift communities out of poverty. But don't forget the energy surging below our feet. Geothermal energy, that is. In Kenya's Great Rift Valley, the heat and steam coming from the earth could provide electricity to millions. UNTV's Louis Patron reports.
Kenya, a nation in the midst of rapid transformation. With a growing population of more than 40 million people, it's one of the fastest developing economies in Africa. But 75% of Kenyans do not have regular access to electricity. To meet their pressing energy needs, some people here may have found a solution in the Great Rift Valley. This volcanic rift was formed by the slow splitting of the African continent. Heat from the Earth's core escapes through the opening, creating hot springs and steam fields.
Now we're in Bulgaria, and this is where we have the geothermal power plants, the biggest plant in Africa.
Geophysicists like Ana Wairimu Mwangi keep track of the hot water and steam deep under the ground.
Around Bulgaria, we use several geophysical methods to try and find places where we can locate the wells for drilling for steam to be connected to the power plants.
There are 3 geothermal plants in Bulgaria. Highly pressurized steam comes out of 20 wells and is directed through a system of pipes toward the turbines. The system generates about 200 megawatts, or 17% of electricity produced in Kenya. And that's just a fraction of the estimated 10,000 megawatts of Kenya's untapped geothermal energy potential, which, if fully utilized, could power millions more homes. But the Great Rift Valley is also home to the Hell's Gate National Park. Some worry about the free movement of animals being disturbed by the network of pipes and roads from the nearby plants. And drilling requires the use of large quantities of water, sometimes taken from protected wetlands. To minimize the environmental impact, the company has restored and reforested the area surrounding geothermal wells after drilling. The power plants re-inject the byproduct geothermal water into the ground. Drilling engineer Siche Chemwote.
The best way is to re-inject it back into the reservoir that can be heated back, and we can possibly use it back after a certain period of time.
To tap into the full potential of geothermal energy as a clean power source, Kenya has been working with international experts in the geothermal training program at United Nations University, also known as UNU. Half a world away at its base in Iceland, the UNU program has trained over 500 scientists and engineers from numerous developing countries, including 62 Kenyans in the past 30 years. Ludwig Björksen from the UNU training program.
If you want to have a serious development, you cannot only do it through consultants. You have to know yourself what you're doing.
Anna is one of them. Back home, she's working with KenGen, the largest electricity producing company in Kenya, on geothermal energy development in the Great African Rift Valley. The goal is to increase its production by 25 times, accounting for about 30% of the country's targeted energy mix in 2030.
We're increasing capacity. The industry is becoming bigger. There are many fields that we are exploring now. It is now upon us, the Kenyans, to train other people.
A promising project for the future. Thanks to Louis Patron from UNTV for that report. Now to a traditional Tibetan dance that has spread its roots across Asia. The Tsam is a Buddhist custom performed in countries like China, India, Bhutan, and Mongolia. There, the dance has long been part of Buddhist culture, but the communist regime that ruled the country for nearly 7 decades banned the Tsam and other religious ceremonies, so performances were few and far between. Nowadays, the tradition's been revived. TMTV's Dorj Sengenyav shows us the steps.
The Mongolian Tsam dance is a type of religious mystery play that has its origins in Buddhist ceremonies. Its name comes from the Tibetan word Tsam, which means dance. Tsam was originally performed by monks to pacify angry gods. A performance of this size hasn't happened for the last 20 years. The dance was outlawed for decades under communist rule.
I'm very happy that this Mongolian Tsam dance is being performed again in its entirety.
The Tsam dance is both a type of active meditation and a prayer. You could also describe the dance as an act of shamanic exorcism, a Buddhist blessing, and a re-energizing experience. The Tibetan dance was adopted in Mongolia in the mid-18th century and performed on particular festivals and holidays. Soon, each Buddhist monastery developed its own variation of the dance. Tsam dance took on its own Mongolian flavour, reflecting local traditions and ways of life. More than 500 monasteries had established their own Tsam rituals by 1921. Then came the Mongolian Revolution and the start of Soviet rule. In 1988, the dance was recognised as a part of Mongolian cultural heritage. People began to stage small Tsam rituals in 1990, mainly for tourists. The dancers wear exquisite costumes. The pointed boots resemble the mouths of crocodiles. The masks represent deities. Both costumes and masks are made from gold, silver, copper, leather, silk, satin, and other types of expensive materials. As well as being colourful and highly decorative, they're adorned with religious symbols. They're the work of the country's best painters, sculptors, and craftspeople. Many customs surround the performance of the dance. Only men are allowed to take part, and they have to go through a cleansing process before they appear. The dancers performing here are university students.
We had a lot of work to do to prepare. We weren't allowed to eat meat for 3 days, and we had to wear the chadag around our necks. You have to behave very well the whole time. I'm really pleased that I was able to take part.
In the Jagcha Tsam, the main character is the god of law. He's also known as the god of death. Jagcha means the dance of the Iron Palace. The palace symbolizes a state full of demons and evil spirits. Tradition dictates that the dance and rituals are performed in a strict sequence. Tsam dance is akin to opera. Every gesture has its own meaning.
Өмнө 1786 онд анх удаа Эрдэнэ 100 хэд цам харьяасан байдгийг.
Tsam was performed for the first time in the Eden Zoo Monastery back in 1786. Back then, a white, a blue, and a yellow old man featured in the dance. Over time, the blue and yellow man were forgotten, and only the original white one remains. We only came across the older figures during research. Back then, our ancestors believed there were three types of people, and they knew that we had to live in harmony with one another.
If you get the opportunity, be sure to watch this mesmerizing spectacle. Tsam dance takes us into an unfamiliar, enchanted world. It's a profound spectacle that's bound to make a lasting impression on you.
A beautiful tradition indeed. Now, Europe is one of the world's top tourist destinations, but it's not just London and Paris and Rome anymore. Curious travelers have started to head east. Now cities like Bratislava and Zagreb are seeing an influx of tourists, but they don't always have the infrastructure to cope with the increasing volumes of traffic. In our next story, we go to Bulgaria, where the international airport in the capital, Sofia, is undergoing a serious makeover. The work on the new state-of-the-art control tower has already been completed, an important step forward. Nova TV's Jivko Konstantinov shows us more.
The new tower was completed on budget in just over a year. At a total cost of €7.5 million, the building was considerably cheaper than similar projects elsewhere, including a new air traffic control tower at Britain's Manchester Airport.
I'm proud to say that the overall project costs were only a third of what our colleagues in Manchester spent. That's important for us and the country as a whole.
Sofia Airport can now cope with a projected increase in volumes of traffic. Up to 7 air traffic controllers can work in the new tower. Previously, only 3 were on duty. An elevator takes us up to the control room, where takeoffs, landings, and ground movements are coordinated. One of the features of the control room are the windows, positioned at an angle and laminated to protect against direct sunlight. The controllers no longer have problems dealing with glare.
The controllers enjoy a 360-degree uninterrupted panoramic view of the airfield. What does this mean? It means they can follow all aircraft movements within the entire area they are responsible for.
And that means by day or by night, the air traffic controllers can keep track of things far better than from the old tower.
This is really just great. After 7 years working in the old tower, there the visibility was limited for a number of reasons. Then I came to see the new one and I was very impressed. It's so open, completely different.
Sofia's new control tower went into service in December 2012.
And the new control tower is just the start. The new terminal will be able to accommodate twice as many passengers as the old one. Now, it's something you might have experienced before. You're standing in the kitchen hungry, but you can't find a thing to eat. And before you rush out to get some groceries, here's some food for thought. What about foraging for some fresh and crunchy ingredients right outside your door? No, not plants. I'm talking about grasshoppers or ants. That might not be your cup of tea, but it's the idea behind one Mexico City's chef's restaurant. Fortino Rojas's Pre-hispanic or Aztec cuisine is meant to take diners back to Mexico's roots, quite literally. Canal 21's Nancy Estrada takes us on a culinary journey.
If it creeps and crawls, it just might end up in my cooking pot.
That's how Don Fortino Rojas, chef at the Don Chon Bar, sums up the essence of his pre-Hispanic cuisine.
I'm going to prepare a few grasshoppers. That's been a traditional dish since the pre-Hispanic times and has remained so until the present day. The first thing you need is a good frying pan. Then you add a little oil, chop up some garlic, and put it into the pan.
Fortino Rojas hasn't had an easy life. He grew up in a very poor family. He had to share the 2 kilos of beans which his mother cooked on an open fire every day with his 17 brothers and sisters.
I come from Puebla, from a small village called Los Rios de Juarez. That's where I was born, 68 years ago. I started to cook to survive in the big city. I only went to school for 6 months. Nowadays, you need a high school degree or something similar.
He started experimenting with pre-Hispanic cooking in the 1960s when he got the chance to work in the La Fonda bar, as Don Chon used to be called.
Up to that point, my life had had its shares of ups and downs. I'd worked in the docks and as a trader, and I'd also tried to earn a living as a farm laborer. The first thing they taught me here was to season things properly, and to prepare food, of course. I think I'll add some more chilies for some more taste.
What kind of chilies are they?
Oh, they're hot chilies.
Every day, Fortino Rojas visits the market of San Juan to buy meat. He buys ants and other insects at Merced Market.
At San Juan Market, you can buy more or less anything. Crocodile, snake, wild boar, grasshoppers, pheasant, quail.
By reviving these very old recipes, Don Fortino Rojas would like to put a piece of Mexican culture back on the menu.
It's a big lie when foreigners say that Mexicans eat nothing but beans, tacos, and chilies. Our cuisine definitely stands up in international comparison. Here you can take a nacho, for example, add a little guacamole, and a couple of grasshoppers.
The chef at Don Chon knows that pre-Hispanic cuisine gets little attention, but he thinks it's worthy of international recognition.
Junk food like pizzas or hamburgers may taste good, but they're high in carbohydrates and calories.
On the Don Chon menu, you can find specialities like crocodile in green pumpkin seed sauce, ostrich in plum sauce, venison in pumpkin seed sauce, and pheasant on a bed of rose petals.
And you can find grasshoppers like these.
There's also a very diverse selection of desserts.
For dessert, we have a chocolate amaranth cake. Chocolate is a typical local product.
What was that?
Mezcal.
The chef admits that pre-Hispanic cuisine is expensive, but he says it's worth it.
To really enjoy pre-Hispanic cookery, you need money. You do pay a bit more for it.
Creative flavors and unusual textures characterize this chef's popular cuisine. At the weekend, Mexico City's more adventurous diners flock to his restaurant.
Usually on Fridays. Well, from Thursdays to Saturdays, there's a lot going on. On Mondays, it's dead. That's got to do with the rising prices. Here in Mexico, if people go hungry, it's because they can't be bothered. There's certainly enough good food to go around. Just delicious.
For Capital 21, this is Nancy Estrada and Javier Cordero.
looks delicious. Don Fortina Rojas is not the only chef experimenting with pre-Hispanic cuisine. It's become a trend at high-end restaurants in Mexico City. For all of you intrepid diners out there, good luck. Now we head to Bangladesh, where we meet a brave and bold group of women in the north of the country who've been tackling social problems in their district. Whether it's alcoholism or drugs or gambling, the Women of Torch, as their group is called, help people in their communities get back on the right path. ETV's Sakawat Liton has the story.
This is Sudamini Sharma. Unwilling to put up with drug abuse and related crimes spreading through her home district of Arampur, she decided to take a stand. She founded the Muira Paibi Women's Group to help fight for change in Arampur. Sudamini started raising support for her cause among local people, but it wasn't easy to begin with.
At first, people weren't very convinced. What could these people actually do? But we got organized and demonstrated.
They began their campaign group back in May 2008. There were a lot of problems with drug addiction, with gambling and so on. Drugs were being sold openly. The local community was badly affected.
Drugs were also a problem. They caused a lot of trouble. Things were becoming impossible. School classes were being interrupted. The children couldn't concentrate on their studies.
The whole area was being taken over by drinkers, people smoking cannabis, and gamblers. Families were being badly affected. Sudamini Sharma's women's campaign group decided to adopt the name Muira Paibi, which means torch. Members of Torch soon started to address local problems by speaking out against the social problems connected with drug abuse, as well as other important issues.
We are fighting against drugs, cannabis, gambling, and violence against women. We campaign against underage marriage and the custom of dowries. We're trying to increase awareness about child labor and convince people to send their children to school instead.
And their campaign to increase awareness of social problems and their consequences has had an effect. They've helped many addicts kick the habit.
The situation is far better since we started our campaigning.
I
got into drugs. I was spending my time with the wrong people. But the women from Torch, they're locals and they helped me get clean. And now, I don't take drugs anymore.
Previously, a lot of the men around here didn't actually spend much time with their families. Fathers couldn't be bothered to help their kids do their homework. They preferred to go out. They ended up getting involved in drugs or gambling. But now they're going back home, and this is what we want.
We recognize that the women of this locality have done a lot of good work. It's a positive step for the local economy, and it's good for our confidence and dignity.
Sudamini's contribution to the community has not gone unnoticed. She was recently honored with this award.
I informed the authorities about the women's campaign, and they told me to offer any help they required. Now the situation in our district has vastly improved, and I think we're pretty much drug-free.
My hope is that women all over Bangladesh will start campaigning and rid our society of drugs.
And the torch is still being carried through the streets and lanes of Arampur, offering encouragement to those who want to leave a life of drugs and crime behind them.
And finally, before we go, one more item that caught our eye this week. Peruvian activist Richard Torres wanted to take a stand for the environment. So, on a sunny Sunday in Buenos Aires, he decided to say "I do" to a tree. Supporters and curious onlookers gathered in the city's Rose Garden to celebrate the couple's nuptials. Torres said he hoped to bring more attention to the world's environmental problems, and it was love at first sight. Well, that's all for this week's edition of World Stories. Thanks for joining us. I'm Sumi Somaskanda, and see you next time.
Sí, me comprometo. Entonces...